How lovely to see all of you here today, and welcome to the Masterclass with Ethan Coen and Tricia Cooke. My name is Lisa Hoen, and I am the Festival Director of this film festival. The Coen brothers represent some of the finest aspects of American film culture. It's great storytelling, it's technically skilled in all parts of cinema, both visuals, sound, editing, and acting. What makes the Coen films true classics are the unique storytelling, blending of genres, a lot of dark humor, something I know the Tromsø audience love, and is a type of humor that also is very much North Norwegian kind of humor. But now that I rewatched so many of their films, I realized that it's really these weird, eccentric characters such as Marge and the Dude that I really, really love and get fascinated by again and again. And so many people have been asking us, how did you manage to get this prominent guest to TIFF? Why did they choose to travel all the way up to the Arctic? Well, I can tell you that it started a long time ago, and we got some help from our friends. Our friend and colleague, Kaleem Aftab, actually ended up in a pop idol party with Tricia Cooke and Ethan Coen many years ago. And our TIFF friend, he showed up in a white suit and a hat, and he was singing "Everybody Wants to Rule the World." And I don't know if it was his singing or maybe more his charisma, but he became friends with Tricia and Ethan that time. And he actually ended up living in their basement. And many years later, Kaleem became a friend of our former director Montages.no, which we all maybe know. And Kaleem became a true friend of our festival. So he came here and he posted a lot of photos on his Instagram about TIFF and Tromsø. And Tricia, she was probably in New York, I think. She watched his photos and she said, "Where is that? I want to go there." And finally, after a couple of years of waiting, because, you know, great filmmakers are also busy making films, luckily for us. Finally, they are here. Please welcome on stage the director and editor Tricia Cooke, the director and producer Ethan Coen, and our moderator today, film critic and programmer Kaleem Aftab.
Good afternoon. Welcome to Tromsø.
Thanks.
It's a great pleasure to have you here. And as Lisa mentioned, going to film festivals is important for film culture. When you were growing up in separate places, obviously, Ethan, were you someone who would go to film festivals? How did you get into film?
No, film festivals, no. You know, like most people my age, my first exposure was to movies on TV. And, you know, at the cinema. Film festivals were, that's part of some, I don't know, industry thing or something that was very much removed from my reality as a kid or as a youth.
The same. I mean, I don't think I knew film festivals existed until I was an adult, and I watched most of my movies either at the drive-in or in my basement, something like that. I never heard of Tromsø, the film festival, or The Place, and no other film festival either, I don't think.
And so that does beg the question, what made you want to be a filmmaker and what made you want to be an editor? Were there people you admired? Did you hear someone talk at an event, or was it the films themselves?
For me, it was just very much, like I say, my exposure to movies was on TV, and it was Hollywood movies of the time being the 60s. So my training, if that's what it was all unbelievably lowbrow, and that explains a lot, I think. And making movies was just with me and Joel, with me and my brother, it was just it was a lark. It was something we did without any serious thought about anything. We were just kind of goofing around. And we were just talking about the movie we saw last night, My Grandmother. That was like, for the parts of it that I was awake for, nothing about the movie. We had just traveled the day before. I'd been up for 24 hours. It reminded me, what me and Joel did, I don't know, I really liked the movie because it was, for me, reminiscent of that. Just kind of playing around and seeing what you could do with a movie camera. It was fun. It was play.
Yeah, I grew up in Southern California. My dad used to go backpacking a lot in the Sierra Mountains. And when he would come home, he would have like a Super 8. He would bring a Super 8 camera, and he would give me all of the reels. And I had like a little Super 8 kind of station that I would cut them together when I was, 12, 13. And I enjoyed it. I'm kind of introverted, so it was like, me just kind of concentrating on one thing. And I didn't know what else to do. When I went to college, I thought, I really enjoyed film. I really enjoyed cutting those movies together, and I loved watching, the films that like Robert Altman, Come Back to the Five and Dime, Jimmy Dean. Jimmy Dean was a really important movie to me. Like all of those movies from the late '70s, early '80s, and Alice Doesn't Live Here Anymore. Nothing that screamed, like the great editing. I'm Raging Bull, but when I went to school, I was like, I enjoyed doing that, and I love movies, so they kind of went hand in hand.
4 decades ago is the 40th anniversary this year, almost now, Sundance time. Blood Simple hit the festivals. It got an amazing reaction all of a sudden. What's your memories of starting out and making that first film?
Yeah, again, making the movie was just kind of an extension of, what we're both talking about. What we kind of like doing as almost children, youths, certainly. It was just kind of fun to do. It was really, making that first movie was just stimulating. It was great fun. And the movie coming out and being successful, we kind of knew... we took that for what it was, luck, people can make good movies and they're never heard of. It just doesn't work out for them. So that was great. That was nice because it meant we could make a second movie. And that's kind of just, my career in as far as I have one. You go, okay, we're successful enough such that we can do another one, and that's great. It was really important for us that we were kind of embraced. It's kind of, I don't know, frankly, in a way, it's a little gross when everyone likes what you've done, but we'll take it, because a lot rides on it. Doing the next movie is that rides on that. So, great,
Blood Simple was like a very stylish noir film. And then you follow it up with Raising Arizona, which is broad comedy with Nicolas Cage. Immediately you set yourself apart as filmmakers who wanted to play with different genre and elements, going from the serious to the comedic, which is a theme throughout your career. Was that something on purpose that you intended to do, or did you have a few scripts and that was the right one to pick?
No, we sat down to write that one, having finished the first one. And I don't want to overuse the word, so I promise it's the last time I'll speak it. But we kind of did a different movie because that would be fun. We just spent, you spend a year and a half making a movie. You don't want to go out and make the same movie again. It's like, again, you want to be stimulated. You want to kind of fool around. Every movie we've done, we've sort of, not even flatter yourself. Who knows? You want to not do anything you've done before. And then weirdly, you find yourself, you can't run away from yourself. Unfortunately, there's a limit to that. You find yourself kind of repeating things. But to the extent that you're conscious of it, you want to do something new because you already did the old thing, you know?
And I'm going to mostly concentrate on this masterclass on the films, the 7 films previously that Tricia worked on as an editor, and then move on to Jerry Lee Lewis, which you co-directed, the documentary, and finally mention the new film, which will be out soon, Drive Away Dolls. So as part of that journey, Tricia, I'm interested. How do you get a job on a big film? I know you're an apprentice on Miller's Crossing. What was that process? How do there's a lot of people who want to get into movies and want to get onto jobs. How do you do it?
Well, I went to film school in New York, the same film school that Joel went to, and this doesn't answer your question, but the final year that I was in school there, Joel and Ethan had come to Screen Raising Arizona, and all of my friends were going. They're like, we're going to go to the Coen Brothers movie. And I'm like, who's that? And I was so not interested that I was like, yeah, I'm going to see Koyaanisqatsi. And so I had, they had been introduced to my world. And I got out of school, and I worked on a movie in New York, doing craft services, and it was a hard movie. We were lugging, coolers up 6 flights of stairs. It was the last movie Robert Wise made called Rooftops, and it was hard, 18-hour days, and I just worked hard on it. And the accountant on that movie was going down to New Orleans to work on Miller's Crossing. And so I said, if there's anything on that movie, I would love to. I've never been to New Orleans. And I got a job as the camera PA, working with Barry Sonnenfeld. And on that job, and that's a great job if you want to start working in film. Being the camera PA is amazing because you're right next to the camera and you're learning so much. And I got to know Joel and Ethan a little because it was in such close proximity. And I told them that I really wanted to edit, and they said, okay, great, you can be the apprentice on this movie. So then I started working in the cutting room with them.
And what does it mean to be an apprentice editor?
That was when we were cutting movies on film, so you needed an apprentice more than you would on a film today, but I mean, it's a little dull, back in the day, you had, physical film that you were cutting with, you had a work print, and you would, take it and splice it, and then you would hang it in a trim bin. The stuff that you weren't using, you would you would build the reels out with the work print. And all of the leftover trims was my responsibility as an apprentice, kind of organizing everything that wasn't going into the movie. That's what I started out doing. And then gradually working with them, I, started assisting and doing more sound work and then cutting with them as well.
For you, what does it mean to bring on new people? How do you choose people to work with? You've got so many collaborations throughout your career, such as Roger Deakins, Carter, Skip Lievse, who you continually work with. What are you looking for, and what is the benefit of working with people you've worked with time and time again?
Well, I promised I wouldn't use the word again, but you're looking for somebody to be fun to work with. And all of those people, kind of fit the bill. Yes, it's a good question. There's a lot of comfort in working with somebody you've worked with before, and a lot of efficiency in working with somebody you've worked with before, because you both know what you're talking about from day one. You don't have to learn that. And they're great people. You only want to work with them again because you like them personally. But there's also something stimulating about working with new people. So it's just a kind of balance thing, If you don't work with somebody new, you're not going to meet the person who will be like the old people that you're familiar with and have fun working with. So it just, I don't know. It's hard to, there isn't a rule about it, but Skip Levsay, for instance, has worked on literally every single one of our movies. Who else did he mention? Roger, I don't know. We've done at least 10 movies with Roger. And actors, it's always kind of the same thing, a mix of people that we've worked with before. I don't know, you're just kind of looking for comfort and for, an opportunity to work with people that you'll have comfort with in the future. It's always like a mix for us. Maybe with us more than for other people, there are more familiar faces than new faces with every successive movie. And I don't know why that is. Maybe just lack of imagination.
I'm sure it's not lack of imagination, because one of the things that's so striking about all your films is not only the strength of the storytelling, but the symbolism and the signs on the screen. I wore my hat in honor of Miller's Crossing. Can you talk a bit about Miller's Crossing, writing that film, and how you write knowing that it's not for someone to read on a page, but to see visually?
Yeah. Well, certainly the antecedents of that movie are kind of what we wanted to do. It had nothing to do with movies. It had to do with fiction that we liked, me and Joel, hard-boiled fiction. Dashiell Hammett and Raymond Chandler. And, well, as regards that movie specifically, really Dashiell Hammett, we thought it would be great to do a Dashiell Hammett story. But we never thought about actually adapting one, because the plots of his stories are kind of, shitty. They're kind of, they're an excuse to write, and he was a great prose stylist, and we thought, okay, let's write a good Dashiell Hammett story. So that was our intention anyway. And in terms of, but you're writing a movie, not a novel and not a play, so your whole sort of, I don't know, it's a kind of orientation towards what you're doing. You're going, I want it to be a Dashiell Hammett story, but I want it to be a movie. So you're mindful of that as you're writing. And, what happens next is, what would be after this scene, what would be the cut? What would be a good cut? What would be good to happen next? What I'm saying, I'm repeating myself, you're thinking about it as writing a movie, you know what I'm saying? And, what's going to make the next scene good might be, among other things, how it looks, where it's set, and I don't know. But you're just thinking about, okay, let's suppose we're making a good movie, what would happen next?
Well, and I'm just going to jump in here, not that I was there when you were writing it, but like visually dynamic, how are we going to get into the next scene and make something that is interesting to go to next, not just plot-wise, but visually as well.
How do the actors affect this? Because you're there, you've imagined something as you're going along, and then you have actors interpreting your words. Obviously, in Miller's Crossing, you have Albert Finney, Gabriel Byrne giving incredible performances. Do they change your mind as you're watching, as you're making the film, or do they affect what you're thinking?
Well, that's an interesting question, because the answer is so hodgepodgey. In that movie, we wrote, as we often do, we wrote some parts, maybe in that movie just one part for an actor that we knew, John Turturro. So that's kind of in the writing process. You're imagining that specific person in the suit of clothes, or, as it were. So that's kind of a different experience than, no, you know what, I take it back, oddly. We wrote another part for an actor that we knew, Trey Wilson, who was in Raising Arizona, and that was the part that Albert Finney ended up playing, because shortly before production, Trey died very young, very unexpectedly. So that was kind of shocking. But, but that's part of the mix too, the happy accidents and the sad accidents. So Albert came in, he was available on very short notice, and that changes things in your mind. I mean, in your mind as you're working on it, you go, oh, okay, that's what it is now. That's interesting. It's certainly not bad. It's kind of great. It's not what we thought about at all, but it's kind of great. And then Gabriel, again, the answer is hodgepodgey, but that's movie making. Gabriel Byrne came in just in an audition, and he said, because it was true, you know, I know you wrote the character as an American of Irish extraction, but I don't know, I think the lines would kind of sound good if I kept the Irish accent. So he did. It did sound good. I mean, it just kind of felt good. So that was an unexpected, happy, I don't know, not an accident, but, you know, a decision just because of who came in and who was kind of, you know, Gabriel was great. So that's the answer. There is no answer. It's all like, you know, you get presented with all these circumstances and all these discoveries and all these familiar things in the case of Turturro. And that's, you know, that's what the movie ends up being.
Then we move on to Barden Fink, which is a film that saw you win the Palme d'Or. It's a film that is about a writer, that's about the creative process. It's a film that makes a joke that he's writing a film about wrestling, an orphan, and a romance, and the movie is about wrestling, an orphan, and a romance in many ways. In that film, there's an emphasis on the writer is king, but in your experience of films, it's often said that a film is written 3 times, on the script stage, on the set, and afterwards in the editing. Is that something you believe in your philosophy?
Kind of and kind of not. I would put it differently. I'd say you're just making the movie. And the titles are all totally artificial. When we're writing the movie, kind of as me and Trish suggested, when you're writing the movie, you're making decisions that are kind of visual and kind of editorial, and you only sort out those titles, you know, after the fact. They have nothing to do with how you actually made the movie, which was just thinking about, okay, what would we do here, supposing we're making a good movie? Other people obviously work very differently. They are either writers or directors or editors, but and again, it's just kind of an extension of what me and Joel did as kids. You're just, you know, making the movie, and there weren't any titles then, and there still aren't any meaningful ones. I mean, in terms of work function, we're all just. And the same is the case with the last movie me and Trish did together, the narrative movie, not the documentary, which is going to come out in a month. We wrote it together. We were, in effect, although not in title, directed it together and cut it together. It's just, you know, you're working on the movie, you're doing the story.
Having had experience outside of your movies, which you never have, I would say that yes, there are 3 different stages, and it's very different on Ethan and Joel's movies because very little changes from, I would say, the script stage through the cutting stage. Like, it remains almost intact. Like, things don't move around very much. You're not really changing the storytelling so much on any of the movies that I've worked on with you. I think maybe we like flipped 2 scenes in the last movie that we made, but pretty much what's on the page is what ends up on the screen. You know, on other films that aren't theirs, you know, you play around a little bit more. If something's not working, you start restructuring the, you know, scenes, or you end up cutting a lot out, or, you know, you do have a little more kind of script writing in the editing process than on your movies.
And that's also apparent, I mean, obviously, when you move further on and you're editing with Roderick Jane, who is pseudonym for the brothers, it shows their capacity for working on all elements. But it's very fascinating what you're saying, that it's not changed so much. But what are the discussions that you're having in the editing room? And has there ever been moments, there must be moments on every film, where you're like, maybe this isn't working as you expected?
On their movies?
Yeah, or
They're total control freaks. It's all. No, I'm kidding.
But sort of not. We have like really heated arguments, probably in the editing room certainly more in the editing room than writing or on the set, about. You would think we were insane. The disagreements are about things that most people wouldn't really notice. You get to really fine points when you're cutting the movie. It seems like, the finer it gets, the more vehemently you can disagree with each other about what's better and what's worse.
Well, also because it's the final stage, so you're really making the final decisions about what's going to be on the screen. Like it's like, oh, okay, this is the last time we're going to be able to make a choice about this. But there were times when, certainly on the last movie that we made together, I would think something was working and Ethan wouldn't think it was working, or vice versa. And then you're kind of, making your case. This is why this is working, or here, let me cut it a different way, and you can see like it works better.
from the editor's perspective, is it more difficult when you have two different heads as director, giving you their own separate opinions? I know often people treat the Coen brothers as one, but there must be times where they're often two.
They almost always agreed. I mean, when I was cutting with them, and it was a process where we would cut different scenes and then we would put them all together and then sit in a room together. And very rarely were there disagreements. I mean, we fought much more when it was just the two of us than, when it was Joel and Ethan.
Yeah, it's funny, the domestic thing, you can bicker, but if there are three people, it's like, company is there, so you don't bicker.
Yeah. You have to be a grown-up.
What did it mean when you won the Palme d'Or? Was that something you aspired to when you enter a competition like Cannes? What was that experience for you?
Well, there are two things. There are always two things. There's, like I say, when everyone likes what you've done, it's a little gross. But I must say it was hugely helpful to have, just in terms of what the experience was, if that's what you're asking, it was hugely helpful that John Turturro was there because he was just laughing the whole time. And I kind of took him as my role model. I thought, okay, you can just enjoy it. It's all a little silly, but okay, yeah, it's good, silly fun. I kind of learned from it. I grew from that experience. Yeah, it was kind of fun. Great. Yeah.
But was it something you aspired to?
Yeah.
Oh God, no.
Do prizes matter to you? Or does the audience
Well, now
reaction?
like I say, Kaleem, it's what I said. I've learned. I've grown. Yeah, they're fun. I'm not supposed to say that, but yeah. Yeah, I'll take any prize from anybody.
If we move on to the Hudsucker Proxy, this is a film that is about capitalism, has many of those themes of people trying to take the short route to riches, which in your movies always leads to a demise. Can you talk about this? Well, often they lead to a demise.
Okay, that's interesting. I think that's just one possible kind of engine for a story. You know what I mean? It's just kind of it's a story convention. They're good because they work. That's a like workable story if you do it right. I don't think it reflects any personal belief or point of view on the underlying issues, because it's not that. It's just, okay, you can make a story out of that.
Tricia, for you, when you were editing this film, it's a film that has so many different elements that comes together. It has almost, in occasions, a very humorous slapstick quality. It does something that the Coens do so brilliantly in all of their films, which is we don't even know what the surprise is going to be. And we're not got that, and often in many films, you get a schema at the beginning where they give you a plot and a moment of tension, and we're waiting for the answer to that. Whereas in their films, and something I think they do more beautifully than anyone else, they travel through a journey, and before we know where we're going, there's a new surprise. It could be the introduction of Frances McDormand's character in Fargo. It could be the imagination of the character in Barton Fink, or even in Llewyn Davis, where we're not waiting for the cats or the music. It's just constantly bringing a surprise. How, for you as an editor, when you know the tempo of a film is different, it's not an A, B, C movie, the characters are so important, how does that affect the editing process?
Oh, God, I don't know if that's how I think about it, really. I mean, especially with these guys, because it was like, you cut this scene, I'll cut this scene. It wasn't, building out the structure. And, I mean, the great thing about their films is that they always have such great actors that it's very easy to cut things together. I mean, you're like, every take is great. It's, it's very easy to piece together a good performance and a good scene. So you don't even change the cut much when I was cutting with them. But no, I don't think, oh, okay, this is the scene where this new person is introduced. Or, I mean, maybe, I don't know, God, that was a long time ago. Was I the editor on Hot Soccer? I don't even know if I cut that movie. But yeah, I think that, it's just, you're really just structuring, like you're cutting the movie together in the beginning, and you're not thinking about the pace so much until after you've got it all strung together, and you're like, oh, okay, we'll go back and we'll make this change. We'll, introduce this character in a different way.
In terms of the writing process, I've heard that you start and then you don't know where it's going to end often. Like, as you go along, you're thinking things up. It's a very A, B, C process. And as you write together, the scripts can change routes. What do you think that adds? Or is that the style of how do you write those scripts?
I was just thinking, sorry, my mind was lagging behind, and I remembered the Marlon Brando quote when somebody asked him something about Apocalypse Now, and he said, "Is that the one I was bald in?" To answer the question, what was the question? Oh, it was about writing.
Yeah.
Yes, we write, and this is true both of me and Trish and me and Joel, without an outline, not knowing how the movie is going to end, or even really sometimes knowing a little bit ahead of time what kind of narrative thing we want to reach some point out, but sometimes not even that, literally not knowing anything about the movie beyond what we've written to, the point we've written to. And it is, so it is mostly like an exercise of thinking, okay, the movie begins this way with these characters, what would develop from that? And it's very much connected to what you were talking about just previously. It's like the good thing to happen next is always the thing that's consistent with what you've written. The characters can't change their natures. You've set down you've set down some givens that you can't overturn. So it's got to make sense, but it's also got to be surprising in some way, or it's dull. So that's really the writing process, trying to figure out, okay, what'll feel like it should have come next, but not feel expected. You know what I mean? It's exactly what you were just talking about.
Yeah, and also without any outline or anything, just kind of like starting and saying, okay, this is a good title and let's make a movie from this title, or, this is what we want to do with these few characters. And you're also just thinking up new characters. You're thinking up new, scenes. You're just like, okay, what's going to be fun to write next? And sometimes that's just imagining new characters too that you hadn't started with. It's all just kind of like, what's going to be interesting and fun to watch that also moves the story along.
I'm just thinking there's one exception with me and Joel. We kind of knew how the movie was going to end once we... It's a good case in point for something, for some reason. Inside Llewyn Davis, Joel said, we were in the office, and Joel said, how about there's a movie that starts with Dave Van Ronk being beat up outside of Gertie's Folk City following a performance. And it's just the whole idea of Dave Van Ronk, a folk singer, being beaten up by a mysterious stranger outside of the folk club just seems so kind of ridiculous and funny that we went, okay, well, that's the movie we'll do. And we knew the kind of next step in that movie, but only in that one, was, we're going to end it. That'll be the end of the movie, too. So we kind of knew the ending of that one before we wrote the middle. But that's very much the exception.
For Fargo, which I very much enjoyed rewatching in -15 in Tromsø, it seemed like the perfect film to do so. This is a film that's obviously was iconic at the time. Francis's performance was amazing. The humor in a noir film is like out of this world. You just don't expect a film that's so dark to be so funny. How did that come about, writing? Was that more, obviously it's set more near where you grew up in some ways?
Yes. I'm crypto-Norwegian. I grew up with a lot of Norwegians and Swedes in Minneapolis. It's very much, it's kind of connected to where me and Joel grew up. It's kind of, with the benefit of some distance from it, weird landscape that's both kind of suburban and American, but also has a weird regional character, specifically regional character. And the setting, that as a setting for a crime drama just seemed, interesting, or it interested us. We thought, okay, well, horrible crime here in Minneapolis. It was just kind of weirdly, I don't know, dissociative somehow, or I don't know, appealing for some reason. You don't even know the reasons. You just go, okay, this could be interesting.
And the visual language is so strong in that. You really use the snow and isolation in very beautiful ways. I know you're often asked, but how does the discussion and the separation between you and your brother work on set? How do you decide those moments? Is there one that's more technical, one that's more storytelling?
No, not at all as between me and Joel, nor as between me and Trish. We just kind of did the same process on our last movie. No, and again, it's kind of an extension of, no, one is not more anything than the other, because being on the set is just an extension of, the writing process. We're just continuing to make the movie together. Is this right or is that right? It's the same question to the same two people. You're just on the set now, and the questions are getting a little more specific,
And Tricia, you're credited as associate editor on that film. What does that mean, and what is that? To the mysterious Roderick Jane, I think.
Yeah, I think that was a step below, actually cuttings, or maybe I was assembling things for them. It's been a while. I remember doing some of the montage stuff, which was fun, and that was a lot of that stuff Sam Raimi directed. He was the second unit director on Hudsucker. So this is all kind of wacky and great camera moves and stuff.
And for Fargo, is there any particular memory you have of that film?
No, I remember being, that was before, I think we have 2 kids, and it was before either of them were born. I remember being in our apartment once and Ethan just like sitting down and writing and writing and writing, and then it was that scene that, it was the scene where the guy's out in his driveway and,
Yeah. Bane Belke is the actor. I can't remember his name. The guy's out in his driveway. He's supposed to be shoveling snow, but it rained the night before, so he was brooming slush out of his driveway.
I just remember, watching Ethan sit there for long, maybe 45 minutes, and reading that scene afterwards and thinking, God, this is so funny. Really appreciating your talent, Heath. Well done.
Oh, madam.
And speaking of talent, The Big Lebowski comes next, and it's a film that is, for many people, the most beloved of the Coen films. It's taken on such cult meanings. There's Lebowski festivals. Everybody knows the dude. Was it like making a cultural phenomenon?
You don't know it at the time, that's for sure.
Yeah. It's very much like the question about the Palme d'Or. Yeah. Okay, we'll take it.
But was there any, I'm watching it, I remember that was one of the first ones of your films that I watched. Wasn't the very first, but and I was just like, as a teenager, just completely like blown away by this film because it had so many different elements from Philip Seymour Hoffman and the mysterious character. Then it had this kind of iconic Coen brothers dude who, for me, when I was younger, I was like, oh, it'd be great to live life like that, until you get older and you're like, I'm not so sure. But it fits in with this schema of this kind of, depressed might be too strong a word, but, very challenged male central character that you have in many movies who fails to connect with women, especially. Can you talk a bit about
They're all autobiographical. This is an opportunity to point out that we're happy to we'll take it. We're happy to sit up here and take credit for these movies, but maybe some of the credit is due to the actors. I mean, if you think about The Big Lebowski without Jeff Bridges and John Goodman and Phil Hoffman, who you mentioned, and Sam Elliott playing the weird Western guy.
Moore.
And Julianne Moore. I mean, what do you got without them?
Yeah, I mean, it's funny because, on the set on The Big Lebowski, you watch all of the bowling stuff and you're like, oh my God, this is amazing. Like, this is so much fun to watch. But the same thing happened on Hudsucker, like the hula, like there were so many fun scenes to watch. And then some just like, it connects or it doesn't. And when The Big Lebowski came out, no one saw it. It kind of became a cult classic. I mean, maybe that's what happens with cult classics. No one sees them when they come out, and then everyone starts to watch them. But no one seemed to, have any use for The Big Lebowski when it came out.
You mentioned...
And nobody had any use for the Hudsucker Proxy ever. And I blame Paul Newman. The guy's just...
That guy's never going to have a career, right? That Paul Newman. No. Speaking of actors, you have so many great actors working for you. But in the next film, Oh Brother, George Clooney joins. He was a superstar at the time. Did you approach him? Did he approach you? What happened? How did you get Clooney in a picture?
We approached him. We had just seen the Steven Soderbergh movie Out of Sight, which is a really good movie, right?
Great movie.
Yeah, and he's really good in it, right? So yeah, so we approached him, and he's enough of a goofball that he was interested. Yeah, we asked George. Yeah, we asked George. We asked John Turturro and Tim Blake Nelson, who's an old friend of ours. More of Joel's at the time than mine. I didn't know him well then. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And obviously, it's associated loosely with Homer's The Odyssey. I'm interested, for both of you, when something is loosely based on existing material, do you reference that material while you're working? Does it influence the edit?
Me and Joel were both. In the credits, it's based upon The Odyssey by Homer. Me and Joel were both proud of the fact that we had never read The Odyssey and still haven't, so no.
Yeah, I was definitely the only person in the cutting room who had ever read The Odyssey.
Which kind of begs the question, was that a humorous position to take? Were you playing a joke on the audience, or what of The Odyssey Cliff Notes did you want to reference?
Well, you know, I say we'd never read it, and it's true, but everybody knows, you know, there's the sirens and there's the Cyclops, and, you know, you kind of know the story without ever actually having read it, and that was just kind of a, you know, well, it's true. It's about a guy returning home after a long absence in the wars, in prison, whatever. It's a guy returning home, so we referred to all the tropes of that story, which everybody knows, even if they haven't read it. It's another kind of discovery thing. We started with the idea of this guy's going back home, and we went, oh, okay, we're doing The Odyssey.
And how is it different cutting for comedy to cutting for drama?
I think it's like a matter of timing. You want to make sure that, you know, it's just different. Comedic timing is a little different from dramatic timing, and so you want to make sure you've got all those beats. You know, usually there's more time in dramatic time, you know, like drama, like you give people a little more time on screen. But again, I mean, cutting with them, like you're not even thinking, oh, this is, you know, this is the dramatic scene or this is the comedic scene. You're just really pacing it off of the performance between the actors. So you just kind of follow what they're doing because on set it works so well. So, you know, you don't even think about timing that much.
Yeah, I totally agree. It's like you don't even think about drama or comedy. It's like there's an objective question, which is what's the right pace? And when you don't have it, it's palpably wrong. It's wrong. It's not even it's not a subjective. You don't have an opinion about what's right or wrong. You look at it and you go, no, that's wrong.
And then The Man Who Wasn't There, which is black and white, is visually very different, very much paying homage in many ways to older movies. At this stage, you mentioned at the beginning that sometimes it's hard not to repeat yourself, but you still seem to be trying all the time to be fresh and new. With The Man Who Wasn't There, you again managed that, and it's like remarkable throughout your career how many like great films you have. Most directors are happy to make one. Already you've made, like, we can argue, I've argued with many people, they think other films are greater than I do, and I think other of your films are better than them. And so, look at that look. And so, for you get there. Are you feeling the pressure now that you're now the Coen brothers?
Oh, no, we never really, no. That was, Yeah, again, as always, we wanted to do something different, but it's not like because we want to do something new to the world or be innovative or anything. We just want to do something new to ourselves. And that was very specifically, we wanted to do a James M. Cain story, just as Miller's Crossing started with us going, okay, we'll do a Dashiell Hammett story. You know, we love James M. Cain, which is a very different, totally different thing from Dashiell Hammett. We thought, okay, this could be interesting, and we started thinking about actors, Fran specifically, and well, like I say, we'll take it. We don't want to be, you know, neither me nor Joel nor Trish, me and Trish, have wanted to be like, you know, innovative ever.
That's incredible. I don't believe that for a second. That's like humble.
Oh no,
because
it's true.
given how like innovative so many of your films are, we can like there's scenes that are incredible throughout the work. But because of time, I want to rush through the other films and just jump forward to, you know, when Tricia and yourself decide to do the Jerry Lee Lewis documentary, how that came about. And obviously, for many people, Joel goes off to make Macbeth, and you're making the Jerry Lee Lewis film, and then Drive Away Dolls, which comes out next month. What made that change happen, and what are you finding now? Is there a freshness?
Wow, there are so many other good films you're leaving out, Kaleem.
I know, there's No Country, there's A Serious Man, I know, time.
Well, I mean, I don't want to speak for you, Ethan. I think Ethan was kind of semi-retired. I think, you know, Ethan, I don't know if he liked to have fun, but he,
Yeah.
but I think you weren't having as much fun anymore.
It got to be less fun just because the last two movies I made with Joel were it's just really difficult in terms of production. They were just hard movies to make. They were still fun days, but that was like, it was kind of a job. It was kind of hard. Just in terms of the production process.
Well, and westerns. I think you guys made, you know, 3 big, hard exterior movies that wore you out.
Yeah. But also Hail Caesar. That was like making 10 different movies at once. So I decided. I thought I just told Joel I was kind of bowing out. I was like, it's gotten too hard. I'm too lazy, too old and too lazy, which he totally understood because he's getting older and lazier himself. But not as much as me. So I kind of stepped out for a while, and then a friend of ours, a friend of all 3 of ours, T-Bone Burnett, the music producer, wrote to Trish about, this is about a year into my bowing out, and it was during COVID, the beginning of COVID. He wrote to Trish asking if she would do this Jerry Lee Lewis documentary that he was producing.
And I was like, no way. I really wasn't that interested. I love Jerry Lee Lewis, but he's such a complicated and kind of angry guy. And I was like, I don't know if I can spend that much time with Jerry Lee Lewis. But Ethan was really interested, so we chose to do that during COVID. It was such a hard time for everyone. It was a dark time globally, but we were very lucky to be able to just, in our home, just get sent tons of archival footage and cut together what had originally started out being a kind of just session film of Jerry Lee Lewis's last session, recording a gospel album. That's what T-Bone wanted. And we turned it into something else.
And it's a film that people can see tomorrow at the festival. Making a documentary, is that an editing process when it's archive material?
That's an interesting question in the context of all the preceding, because it's kind of a writing question. It was all archival footage, all found footage. So the process of making the movie was addressing that question of what comes next, what's the story, is kind of, it's the editing decisions are the writing decisions. You know what I'm saying? You're deciding what the movie is, but you didn't shoot anything. It's all there. It's kind of a mosaic or collage thing. What makes the good mosaic?
Yeah, T-Bone had worked on both Oh Brother and The Big Lebowski. He did the music on that. And so T-Bone had come and said, I want to create this tone poem, Jerry Lee Lewis. And neither one of us even knew what he meant. Like, what is a tone poem? So we just decided to tell Jerry's story through Jerry. We were influenced by Amy and Cinna, those films where, we didn't want to have any talking heads. We just wanted, because there's so much footage of Jerry Lee telling his own story, so much footage. So we thought, okay, this will be interesting. We can let him tell his story. And a lot of archival performance footage as well.
And not only is that a great work, it also then encourages you both to work together on a film that's out in the US next month, Drive Away Dolls. Can you give us a little preview about what that film is and what's it about before I let the audience ask some questions?
Well, that we had written many, many years ago. We'd written it like 20 years ago. And it's a kind of lesbian crime caper. We've written a few like lesbian B movies, genre movies, and that's the first. It's just a kind of silly, trashy, very trashy movie.
When you say trashy, how trashy?
Oh, it's trashy.
A lot of sex, a lot of, dumb juvenile jokes. We basically just wanted to, I identify as queer, and growing up, there weren't a lot of, fun lesbian films to watch. And I wanted to make a movie, like a lesbian movie that was very lighthearted, that was silly, that, wasn't bleak or wasn't a coming out story. Not that those movies shouldn't be made, but we're just like, how can we make a fun queer film? So yeah, we were inspired by, well, for me, Bad Girls Go to Hell, any movie that, doesn't take itself too seriously.
I would be on the set. The actors are great. Again, the actors are great. The two leads are Margaret Qualley and Geraldine Viswanathan. But they're young. They were 29 at the time, in their 20s. Beanie Feldstein, also in her 20s. And the humor is so low, and I would be on the set and go, oh my God, we're making, Romy and Michelle's high school reunion. We're making that movie, I don't remember the name, where the guy sticks his dick in an apple pie and that's the movie. What am I doing?
Yeah, like Ethan and Joel go high, and Ethan and I go really low.
And before I throw it open to the audience, I'm just very curious. You said you started it 20 years ago, scripts, and writing this, idea. It's surely developed. What keeps you going over that period of time? What keeps you thinking one day this film will be made?
I didn't think it would ever get made. I was surprised anyone, I think we thought that we were just writing these movies and the stick in a drawer, and for our kids. One of them, who might still be here, has been working at the festival. Yeah, I don't know. We just were having fun writing them. It was a way to spend time together.
Me and Joel, a very similar thing. We wrote a couple of shorts over the years. One of them maybe at least 20 years ago. We wrote a short in the Old West about an armless, legless guy who was touring with a kind of impresario, and it ends with him being the armless, legless guy being thrown off a bridge into the river. And we thought, no one's ever going to make this. but it was fun to write. And then, we took those short movies, and that was the last movie I did with Joel, the Ballad of Buster Scruggs. So, you never know. You write them for fun, and, could happen.
Amazing. We have some time for audience questions. There's a couple of mics that are roving around. It's hard to see from here.
Hi, I have a question for Tricia. I got really excited when you said that was it the first film you worked on doing craft services for Robert Wise? Because Robert Wise happens to be one of my biggest heroes and inspirations, and he was also an editor turned filmmaker. Do you think, at least retrospectively, that's kind of similar to your journey? I think I'm mostly just asking, has Robert Wise been an inspiration for you, even retrospectively, kind of?
Well, that's an interesting question. I haven't really ever thought about it that way. I loved his movies. I love West Side Story, and The Sound of Music was one of my favorite movies when I was a kid. I know he did one of the Planet of the Apes movies, I think. No, the only well, I don't want to slander. Having done craft service, the last day we had an open bar, and Robert Wise came, and he just took a cup of vodka like this, and that was the last time I ever saw Robert Wise. So I might aspire to something like that.
Amazing. That was a great question. You should do my job. Sure, this one here.
Hi, I'm just curious about your work process working with Carter Burwell, because many directors find it difficult to communicate sometimes with the composers. How is that work process? Can you say something about that?
Carter is another person who we've done literally every single movie. Every single movie me and Joel have worked on has been with Carter from the first movie. All of our first movie, I mean ours and Carter's. What's the process like? It varies from movie to movie. Sometimes, on Miller's Crossing, we had a theme we liked. Actually, Gabriel Byrne suggested this. He said, the whole Irish thing is about, loss and whatever. And he suggested he turned us on to this thing called Limerick's Lament, which is just a kind of an old Irish air. And we thought, oh yeah, that could work. And we passed that on to Carter, and that's what he adapted to make the musical theme. So that was one instance of, we actually asked Carter to use something, and he went, okay, that makes sense, I see that. Other things are different. For Fargo, there was an old Scandinavian, I can't remember what it's called, Little Lost Sheep, a kind of Scandinavian fiddle thing, which Carter found, and he brought it to us and said, I think I'll use this. This sounds kind of like, this is the thing. So then that is indeed what we did. And then other movies, Carter has just come up, most of the movies, obviously, Carter has come up with his own thematic stuff. But what I just said is kind of how we talk to Carter. Is this the thing or is that the thing? It doesn't really get more specific than that, and certainly not more technical than that, because me and Joel and Trish are not musicians. But again, it's like what we were talking about in cutting. There's a palpably, objectively right and wrong, and Carter knows that as well as anyone. You slap a piece of music up against the picture, and it's either obviously right or obviously just a terrible idea. And we've certainly had a lot of terrible ideas. You slap up a lot of possibilities before you find something that seems to work. Usually, although sometimes not. I mean, sometimes there's we're all in tune at the very beginning, and you go, okay, this is what we're doing. But it really is no more specific or no more technical than that, our talking to Carter. Does this work or not?
I mean, he will say, I'm thinking about using these instruments and not these instruments. Like, I mean, I can't remember specific instruments, but he'll say, I don't see the oboe in this score, or, you know, on Drive Away Dykes, he was...
Yeah, no, that's interesting. Sometimes, again, we have a lot of bad ideas. The main theme in it, if you see the movie, there's kind of a love theme, I don't know what to call it, and Geraldine's character's piece of score. That is a sweet piece of music that Carter played on had a harp playing, and I said, nah, isn't that kind of putting a hat on a hat, having a sweet piece of music on the harp? Don't we want like piano or something? And Carter just said no. And he was right. I mean, if you see the movie, you can judge, but he was right.
Great. This question here, over here with the beard, yeah.
Roger Deakins has spoken a lot about how you guys storyboard in a very kind of detailed fashion, and I was wondering, given that he operates, how his operating alters that process and sort of what you conceive versus what you end up with.
Thank you for the question. Can I take the opportunity to say that Roger Deakins is a remarkable camera operator. His hand-eye thing is unbelievable. And he used to work with, Bruce Hammey is now retired, a dolly grip, who Roger is almost always on this kind of crane arm and is operating remotely, you know, looking at a monitor. So the kind of co-operator was the dolly grip he worked with. And they were just amazing. God, why'd you ask about operating specifically? Storyboards. You know, we do storyboard exhaustively. We do storyboard the whole movie before we go, but you know, they're always subject to change, and you know, you find yourself in a set that precludes you doing certain things you thought you might do, or a certain blocking seems to be working better than the one you'd anticipated. So everything is subject to change in a big way, and then in a fine way, yeah, you're right, the camera operator is the one who ultimately decides what the frame is. Yeah.
Thank you for coming here and generously telling us everything behind. I was so lucky to see Blood Simple in a action movie theater in Oslo, and as a cinebuff, I was amazed, and I just wanted you to tell a little bit about this anticipation, and going back to the question just before, it was so well balanced, it was so stylish, and was there actually, how much of correction for being the first movie? It seems like, you know, it is a bit Citizen Kane-ish. It has this masterpiece quality. Did you cut out, did you try out, you know, what's the secret of what's not there? Or was it actually, you know, straight from the heart, ending up almost like it is?
Robert Wise was the editor of Citizen Kane, right? You know, on that, and by the way, thank you for the compliment. I look at it now and I think it's kind of crude, that movie, but I'll take it. There was that movie, like all our other ones, we storyboarded exhaustively. You know, we storyboarded the whole movie before we started shooting. And probably there we tended to stray less from what we had boarded. Probably very little. Probably on that movie, there was less divergence than any other one. I think just because we maybe didn't feel totally. We were inexperienced, but didn't feel totally free. You know what I mean? We kind of felt more obliged to go with the plan than we did subsequently. So to answer your question, that movie really is close to what we boarded.
Great. Yep, this question here.
So I rewatched No Country for Old Men yesterday, and I realized that it didn't have a soundtrack, except for, I think, In the End. What was the reason for this?
Because we all agreed with Carter that it would be bad. So in as much as Carter agreed that it would be bad to have score, he's the author of the score. But then there was a really interesting question, which was, and I think it was the right choice. I think any score comment would have been the wrong comment. Carter did provide, there are some sort of subliminal money-drony things, some sustains that they're played by musical instruments, so I guess you could call them score. But there's no melodic score, there's no theme. And that presented the question of what do you do on the end credits, which are always kind of long in a movie. It's like 4 minutes of music or 5. So Carter did something that it was such a weird exercise for him, and I thought what he did was great. A theme that kind of comes out of nowhere that's established for the end credits. He started with a kind of timekeeping thing, and then it kind of progresses into, as I was saying to this gentleman, I don't even know what to call it. It's the thing. It's like, it progressed into the right thing. Yeah, that's an interesting exercise if you're a composer. How do you write an end credit piece of music for a movie that has no music?
We have time for a couple more questions. I haven't really chosen anyone from the back, so right at the back, up the top.
Hi, I went to see the Jerry Lee Lewis movie on Wednesday here at the festival, and it was fantastic. What made you take an interest in the Jerry Lee Lewis character, and do you see similarities between Jerry Lewis and other male characters from your filmography?
Well, he's such an interesting character. I mean, there are so many conflicts. Like, he has so many conflicts that it was an interesting story to tell. There's never a dull moment in Jerry Lee Lewis's life, so it was an easy story to put together. I don't know, Ethan, does he remind you of any of the characters you've written?
No, he's so much more accomplished than any of them.
Thank you. I'm glad you liked it, and I'm glad you saw it. Thanks.
And for the final, God, this is hard now. Everyone's got a hand up. Pressure on me. This one, he's had his hand up the whole time. So.
Hi. My question's also about No Country for Old Men. You touched on the subject of literary adaptation and adapting Cormac McCarthy to film, I suppose, is kind of a famously challenging affair. I mean, arguably, the two of you are, well, maybe the only ones to do so successfully. And I was wondering, with regards to the process and working with or alongside or sort of in relation to the work of Cormac McCarthy, if there's anything that sort of sticks out with regards to meeting and working with him.
He did visit the set a couple of times. We didn't talk to him before we wrote the movie, and not until, we didn't meet him till the middle of production, middle of shooting the movie. He was great. He is like was really sensible person. He did not give a shit what we did with his novel. He recognized it's a movie. He's written his thing, and now we're doing our thing. He actually, the first time he visited the set, we happened to be shooting something that wasn't in the novel, but now is in his story, in as much as is in the movie. And he could not have cared less. He's a very courtly, he's easier to talk to. He's a great guy. I got him to autograph my copy of Suttree. He was, I don't know what to say. He was great. I was very nervous in spite of that we felt free to make free with what he'd written. I was really nervous when we screened the movie for him, really apprehensive, but I sat like several rows behind him in a pretty much empty theater, and just the beginning, Tommy Lee's voiceover, I heard him start chuckling, so I went, oh, okay, we're okay. I know he did like the movie, so that was really gratifying.
That is a scary thing. Like Jerry Lee Lewis saw the documentary right before he passed away, and it's, you know, it's very scary to think, oh my God, you've made this, adapted someone's novel or made a movie about someone's life, and they're going to watch it, and hopefully they're going to, you know, enjoy it or not hate it. But Jerry Lee Lewis enjoyed that too.
Yeah, Jerry loved the movie. And his wife, which we were even more nervous about, loved the movie.
That's incredible. Tricia and Ethan, it's so wonderful to have you here in Tromsø, for your time and for the wonderful words and the sharing that you're giving us about your work. I know Lisa has something which is a token of our appreciation.
Is it a beanie?
Is it a beanie? Okay, but thank you, Lisa, and thank you, Kaleem. What a pleasure. Thank you for...
and thank all of you. And Tromsø is amazing. We're so happy that we finally got to come. I've been wanting to come here for so long. So thanks for having us.